If it's in a word or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook. Babadook, Dook, Dook. Welcome back to my Halloween month reviews, and for this video, we are going to be covering a South Australian horror film, and that film is The Babadook, directed by Jennifer Kent, as well as written by her, and it is both a creature feature and a psychological horror film. And this film is about a mother named Amelia, played by Essie Davis, who is raising her 6-year-old son named Samuel, played by Noah Wiseman, who can be a real pain in the butt to people around him. He's causing a lot of damage, he's not making any friends, and he's doing some things that are getting him into trouble. And Amelia is also frustrated that he has to do all this stuff, and she's still going through a terrible loss that happened to her on the day her son was born. And then one night, Samuel decides to give Amelia this book and asks her to read to him, but this book is something that she's never read to him before, called Mister Babadook, the story of a monster that wears a trench coat and a top hat. And after she reads the whole thing, all of a sudden she starts hearing noises, and they realize that the Babadook is already haunting their house, where she soon sees that the Babadook is the one terrible thing that goes bump in the night. I remember this movie coming out back in 2014, which was 10 years ago. Oh man. And I decided to come out of my comfort zone when it comes to horror movies around that time, because I wasn't very used to horror movies growing up, and I was finally able to watch it when it came out around Netflix a year later. And it was around that time where I decided to come out of my comfort zone when it comes to movies and watch some more horror stuff, because I wasn't used to a lot of horror movies growing up. And I did find that film on Netflix when I was 18, and when I finished the film, I got off of the couch shaking, and then one night I tried going to sleep without looking at my closet. And I know that sounds childish, I know, but even an adult can watch this film and feel unsettled by some of the stuff that happens. It's one of those movies that got into my head a lot. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I watched it more and more times to the point where it became one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And it's not just because that this movie has a monster that's haunting a mother and her son, because this movie also delves into the psychological side with Amelia and what she goes through. She's not getting a lot of sleep at night, which causes her to be very cranky when she's at work, and she unfortunately has to deal with Samuel all the time, and she is annoyed by him, and for good reason, because Samuel is a complete brat throughout the entire film, where it's the kind where you do end up really hating this kid in the first half of the film. And it's the kind where you see him say or do something that's ridiculous, and you're like, oh god, this kid. He's whining and yelling a lot, and he says terrible stuff about Amelia right in front of her. But when Samuel starts seeing the Babadook itself, he starts to feel really terrified that he's actually there, and he's the only one that's seen it. But of course, Amelia doesn't, and she doesn't believe him when he's saying that. She just thinks that he's making things up in his head. And this movie can also get under your skin with some scenes, like when the Babadook is trying to get into Amelia's head, making her paranoid. She starts seeing some creepy stuff that is frightening her, causing you to feel just as terrified as she is when she's seeing all of those things. And another thing, also without getting into spoilers, this movie does a different shift halfway in, where it makes you side with some characters that you do not like from the start. And I know with that part, it can be a big downgrade for most people, because when most movies do that, they end up losing the audience's attention and feel like they were manipulated the entire time. But the way this film does it, it makes it work for the film and makes sense for the characters, making them feel more compelling, and you start to root for them later in the film, and they have solid performances from Essie Davis and Noah Wiseman, especially with the acting. In particular, Essie Davis as the mother. She is phenomenal as the character, who is dealing with a lot of grief and frustration in her life, making her feel like a believable character. And another thing that does help these characters from being completely unlikable is that Amelia has a problem with her past that she hasn't fully mentally recovered from, that's giving her a lot of grief and depression. And that's one of the main things this movie tackles, is dealing with a lot of grief and a terrible thing that happened in the past. And when that past comes to haunt her, and I don't mean literally, it gives it more of an emotional core. And another thing that does elevate the film's creep factor is the score by Jed Kurzel. The score in this film is one of the most unsettling and haunting scores I have ever heard in my life. In particular, there's this one scene where Amelia is looking through the book in the living room and seeing what's in the book, and when that scene is happening and when that music kicks in, holy crap, that is some of the creepiest stuff I've ever seen and heard. The sound design as well is also really creepy. When that thing is haunting Amelia and Samuel with its banging sounds and its insect-like sounds, it definitely elevates more to the creep factor. And what makes the Babadook itself more creepy is that it kinda goes in the Jaws route, meaning that you don't really see this thing a whole lot, which I know that can be a problem for some people if they're expecting a more straightforward monster movie. But the way this film does it here is that they would use some practical effects and some shadows to hide the design, and when you see some parts of the design, it definitely gives you more of an unsettling feeling. And the only times where you do see the Babadook itself is just from the illustrations from the book that she was reading, as well as a few quick shots of the creature that you only see for like a second. Now, this film is written and directed by Jennifer Kent, who did direct a short film in the past and a TV series, and this is her directorial debut, who also later directed movies like The Nightingale and an episode of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. And she does an excellent job directing the film. She sets up some scenes that are supposed to make you feel like they're getting under your skin, and they work. And she also does a really good job with the writing, giving it a very dark and emotional story for Amelia and Samuel. The Babadook is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. It has a very dark and emotional story. It has characters that start out unlikable, but you end up rooting for them in the second half of the film. Good acting. It has a creepy atmosphere, a creepy score, and a terrifying monster. If you have not seen The Babadook and you love horror movies, I strongly recommend watching The Babadook. And by the time I'm making this video, it is on Netflix right now. And if you have Netflix, you can watch it there. But I suggest you be a little prepared, because just like me, you could end up finishing the film and being scared to look at your closet afterwards. I'm gonna give The Babadook an A. So guys, if you have seen The Babadook before, what do you think about it? Do you think it's an amazing horror film, or do you think that this film wasn't for you? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like this video and my Halloween month review so far, then please leave a like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing, because it helps my channel grow. Hit the notification bell so you know what other videos I'm posting. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.